and conserving the traditional and non-traditional, tangible and intangible heritage of India. It spearheads awareness and conservation. Bindu is the director of the Architectural Heritage Division and also the head of Heritage Crafts and Community Division. She's authored 4 books and many articles in national and international publications. So craft revival and providing market linkages are her forte. Her architectural projects have received numerous awards. Not the least, Ayush Kasliwal is an NID alumni, that's the National Institute of Design, and is one of India's leading design thinkers, practitioners, and advocate for artisans. He, along with his wife, runs the AKFD Design Studio and Anantaya, and is based in Jaipur, India. All aspects of his work reflect social consciousness and sustainability. His work is informed by traditional crafts and artisans, and it reflects an understanding of mythology, architecture, and culture through a contemporary aesthetic. Ayush's list of awards is long, I won't go into it, but most importantly, his heart is in the right place and he doesn't hesitate to get his hands dirty to help out where needed, and I can vouch for that. My name is Smita Mankad, and I've had a 27-year career crossing corporate, government, and social sectors. I've been associated with the craft sector for close to 20 years, since the time I joined Fab India, which is a leading Indian craft retailer. I joined in 2003. I spent 12 years there and worked at the grassroots, creating community-owned companies for artisans, where we made them shareholders, bringing them into the profit-sharing model and teaching them about wealth creation and asset, which were new concepts. So new models of inclusive capitalism. I work as an independent consultant now, and I volunteer my time on grassroots level work and projects. So I'm looking forward to an engaging and interesting conversation with these 3 incredible thinkers and practitioners. And we're going to kick this off with a question that I'm going to pose to Sanjoy to begin with. So Sanjoy, you would need to unmute yourself. Great. All right, so given the scope and the breadth and the depth of what we call cultural and creative industries, what do you really see as its role, and what do you think policymakers see as its role? You're sitting at the heart of the policy making, and what is the perspective? Where do we stand?
Smita, thank you so much, and thank you, Catalyst 2030. And I do hope organizations and programs like this are more numerous in number, because the need of the moment really is to come together as what you've done, Smita. A complex question, and it's going to be a little difficult to unpack it, but I'm going to break it into 2 parts. One is for India, one is in general what you've talked about for the SDGs. I think more so today than any other time, the arts can and must play a role in pushing back on the narrative of hatred that we have seen overcome the world, primarily. What the arts can represent in its largest form, the arts and the creative industry, is really put out a point of view which shows that how does the narrative of hatred come about? It's always about ignorance. It stems from ignorance and the fact that you're always fearful of that which you do not know. What the arts and literature and the creative industries allows for is to understand the other, to understand another people, their history, their philosophy, their way of life, and unpack different religions, different forms, and allow people to understand that at the end of the day, it's humanity and empathy and love that can take us all forward. And this is across, so it's not limited to just the creative industries. If you look at any of the issues around the SDGs, whether it's the freedoms that we're looking at smart cities, infrastructure, right to environment, power, water, all of this comes under the creative industry sort of larger ambit. Equally importantly, I think what we've forgotten is what is the one thing that art also represents, and literature, theater, and music. It allows you to understand that there's not just one truth or one interpretation. It allows you to understand that many truths can stand or sit side by side and be equally true. And it's not necessarily your way or the highway. Having said that, at the largest sense, I mean, in India, of course, at the policy level, I think one of the things that's impacting us and that we need to work on here is that the creative sector as we know it, while we think that it falls under the Ministry of Culture, it doesn't. It falls under 8 different ministries in India. Everything from HRD, which looks after print and publishing and literature, to external affairs that looks after the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, and bits in between. And it's really this issue that's been driving some of the problems that we know, that there's no real focus. And by and large, the creative industries or the creative sector has fallen between many stools. And people don't understand that in India, even as we speak today, that 400 million people who are dependent either on a primary or a secondary income from the creative sectors are out there without a meal. Because we must understand that these people do not have access to finances in the way that many sectors do. And if they don't perform, if they don't sell their wares, if they don't create what they used to creating, well, at the end of the day, they don't eat. And that is the principal issue that we need to focus on.
Raised two very critical points, Sanjoy. One of convergence, which we face, or lack of convergence, which we face in all aspects, actually, the craft sector. And when we talk of handlooms and handicrafts, there are at least 16 ministries and maybe 30 departments. Have working with policy there or even practice proves to be a challenge. The other critical thing really is the nature of the work and how, at one level, they are daily wages. You perform, you eat, you produce and sell, you eat. If you don't, you do not have savings or assets that can see you through. How do we change this? How do we bring China spotlight, make these people visible? Ayush, I want to bring you in here.
Sorry, can I just add one thing before you move on? Just to say that, right in the beginning, last year, when the lockdown happened and the many task forces started, I was asked in the task force meeting, Sanjoy, you carry on about artists and artisans, but why do they need money? Why don't you tell them to donate money to this fund or that fund or the PM Cares fund? And I think that addresses what you said, that there is absolutely no awareness about the needs of the sector. And I had to say that first I thought, of course, they were yanking my chain. And then when I realized they actually were ignorant, I had to say not everybody is a Brad Pitt or a Shah Rukh Khan or a Sonu Nigam. And this is, the Kathak dancer and the Baul singer and the Ragi in the Gurdwara and the weaver in Banaras. All of these people are part of this larger sector. And it's that invisibility, as you rightly said, that needs to be addressed. Sorry, Ayush.
Not at all. The issue of invisibility is something that we've been grappling with. It is not, if I was to compare it to, say, the farmers movement, and I don't want to go down that track, but the farmer now has one face. Artists or artisans do not have one face and one voice, and they do not carry that heft. How do we change that? How do we shine the spotlight, bring visibility, so that really and they're all around us. In India particularly, we have the strange problem of plenty. The artists, artisans are all around us, and that also makes them invisible. So Ayush, and then Bindu, if you want to weigh in.
So, I've got a slightly, macro kind of perspective on this. And it's great that we're looking at creative and cultural industries, as crucial for development. I, however, feel that instead of calling it an industry, if we look at it as an endeavor, and creativity along with culture are part of every aspect of human existence. Every. We perhaps are focusing on people who derive their primary source of livelihood through creative and cultural means and a search of relevance in a rapidly changing society. While on one hand there's a scant regard for cultural and creative inputs, on the other there's a massive premium to it. Something that is widely recognized in some of the more organized industries, like say the tech industry. So there's this massive disparity in how we are looking at creative and cultural industries. So the missing really is, as I see it, is a lack of structure and reach and the related values that they bring in. It's largely unorganized because it is unorganized, because nobody is, as Sanjoy mentioned, 8 ministries, they don't even talk to each other. Forget, artisans. So I think the big missing that is there in the sector, and in India, craft and culture go hand in hand. We really cannot separate the two. We celebrate a festival called Diwali, which is incomplete without a handmade diya. We have Navratra, which has the pot or the matka as the center, the garb or the womb. So these are two things that are together, and for each to survive, we need the other. And it's not just an industry. It's how we live. It's our festivals. It's our ceremonies. They're all part of a big ecosystem, which we sometimes forget. The world's largest street festival is in Kolkata, the Durga Puja, and it is mind-blowing. And now, if you look at the economy, and because livelihood is a very, very important thing, there's a massive shift from the knowledge economy to the experience economy, where an experience is getting, much more value, and the kind of opportunities that come with it are massive. So for us to look at a much bigger picture and look at everybody as a creative person, as a cultural person. And the thing is, it's not just the past. Culture is how we live today. When my daughter says LOL on her WhatsApp, it is her culture. So to look at culture as an ever-evolving, human aspect, and to take the most of it, and to proactively shape the culture as you would like it to be, is a dialogue that is required. We cannot boil it down to just, and it is important, and I'm not so demeaning it, but it's not just about getting food onto the plate. It is about who we see ourselves as. Very often identity is put at the top of the pyramid. I would choose to say that identity is the bottom of the pyramid as well. Yes, I cannot say that I will not give you food and give you identity. It's not going to happen. But it's a very, very, very important and seminal thing. And particularly when we talk about this industry, it is crucial. The identity of an artist, craftsperson, or anybody in this field is very, very important. So due recognition to an identity is crucial for this sector to grow.
I think you're absolutely right. And when we speak of identity, being creative is at the core of what being human is. I mean, each one of us have it, whether we recognize it or not. And that is the reason I believe humans have been able to evolve and grow, Well, taking this conversation a little forward, there are two aspects. There is, of course, the aspect of living culture and heritage and preserving that. There is also the aspect of livelihoods. And where do we and how do we balance that? And Bindu, maybe you want to share, because INTACH has done seminal work on both, and you really do bring both of them together. You want to share?
Yes, thank you, Smita. So while Sanjay and Ayush were speaking, and some thoughts came to my mind. So I'd like to just share with them, and as a collective, this thing that, I think most of us know that the craft sector is the second largest employer after agriculture in India. it's not really recognized as. So there needs to be a paradigm shift in the mindset of the government and of the people, I feel, all of us, that let us not look at it as a needy sector. Let us instead now start to look at it as a bountiful sector, as a sector that is actually giving more than it's taking from society. And the government needs to, and maybe CD or INTACH or Sanjoy can be catalysts into bringing that paradigm shift in policy, therefore in policy, as to not make the craft or the cultural sector as the needy sector where the government is giving only to us. However, it is getting back more. You know, something like that happened with the tourism sector, where they have managed to somehow shift a little bit as a sector that provides. So for us also in this creative and cultural economy field, I think that we need to all work together, and you have many people who can do that, as to bring out the positive aspect of craft, of culture, and how it is contributing actually in real terms. And it can contribute far more with a little more support, you know. So that I think that, and as INTACH, we have been able to straddle, maybe we are in a unique position to straddle both sides, because we do get a lot of funding from the government. And we are also an NGO with 280 chapters. Everybody has a different mindset, and we cover a vast kind of thinking process as to what is needed in our this thing. You know, we started. I'm going to talk because our experience is with my experience is with the architectural heritage of India a lot, because I do a lot of projects. And it was while doing these projects that I realized that, of course, nobody had engineers and architects when all this magnificent architectural legacy was built and given to our country. They were all craftspeople. They may have been ustads or something, but they were all craftspeople. And they were able to create monuments and buildings and palaces that no one can, even with their technology today. The span that they created, the beauty that they created, the cooling systems they created. I mean, that's a huge wealth lying with them, huge wealth of knowledge. And we really need to make, so the thing is that the government is in the cultural economy and this area, it's our biggest client. It actually is. The government is our biggest client, and they are also the policymakers. So basically the circle has to come from them. They begin it, they can begin it, and they can end it. And therefore policy and people like Sanjoy and all of you really need to talk about that. And we try to do it, we try to structure and to bring. So what happens to these stone carvers, wood carvers, tile makers, thatchers, roofers, layers, plastering people? They are considered as labor. In the government, this thing, they are not even semi-skilled to them. They are considered as labor, but they're not. So we need to bring that aspect that these are skilled people, and they have to be treated as skilled and paid as skilled people. Okay, even if they're not paid like what you would pay an engineer, because you think that he's had a 5-year degree, but they have generations of training behind them. So how are we as a group going to bring that? Is it through some kind of certification? Is it through training, more training? We have to bring, I'm talking of the architectural field. We started documenting traditional building crafts of India. And we've started documenting and publishing it and putting it in the public domain. And we're also trying very hard to, and there is some kind of notification or law, I'm not very clear, because it never that every public building has to have 20% craft in it. However, that is not ever taken into account, because there is, in the middle, there is that level, as we know, of the government employees who will change it to something else, So we have to, those are the kind of things, I think, the structured thinking in specific areas has to, we all have to work towards that.
I take your point.
I just want to add one small thing, if I may. Can I? So, at very often, and this is my experience in the product side of crafts, is that, the government has its own task fairly cut out. And it should probably concentrate on that. And there are some tasks that we as a society need to take on. And there's a societal shift that is required, because there's only so much we can expect the government to do. It is saddled with its own challenges. And I think probably along with policy, if we look at what is the societal change we want, how do we want media to talk about this? How do we make something that is handmade more valuable? Currently, people say, "Oh, this is a machine-made sari. This is a handmade sari. This is more expensive. I'll buy that." But cost cannot be a parameter to look at creative and cultural industries as such. So it's a mind shift. It's a societal shift that we look at. It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It has to be a mind shift. It has to be a paradigm shift from, thinking of them as small people or smaller people than qualified, educated people,
If we start talking about this as an ecosystem and not industry or economy or pyramids or bottom of pyramid and top of pyramid, if we look at it as a circle and an ecosystem that we all are part of, and there is a give and take. And Bindu, taking your point on it's not a needy sector, but it's a sector that gives.
Yes.
It's becoming more and more, because when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, increasingly there is recognition that a local handmade, seasonally made product is actually ticking the box on at least 7 to 8.
Yes.
Whether it's sustainable consumption and production, reducing inequality, decent work and fair wages, clean water and sanitation, no poverty, right? Climate action. I mean, we're addressing so many SDGs in one go through this. I mean, by keeping production local, handmade, So there is a role and there is a very strong case for, like we have the Smart Cities project, to encourage smart village and smart cluster projects, which are integrated and self-sustaining and are actually giving back and are part of the solution. So, Sanjoy, you want to share something?
I just wanted to react to two things that Bindu and Ayush said. One is that, in one of the task force meetings, again, when the MSME minister said, we'll include artisans in the MG Narega scheme. And for those of you who don't know, this is a scheme for workers in rural India where you get a minimum wage if you dig a well or make a road or whatever. And I had to explain to the minister, I said, Minister, are you aware that it takes 1,000,000 times of doing something to build muscle memory? So as Ayush said, even the potter who does the simple diya, I said, sir, I mean, would you be able to throw a piece of clay on a potter's wheel and make a diya? Yes, it's a simple diya. But do you know that it takes 7 to 8 to 9 years to be able to perfect? How do you make that simple diya? Similarly, in the weaving process, similarly, if you're a performer or a dancer, this is not instant rocket science. And as Bindu rightly said, how do you build that value? This is how you have to do it. We have to make people aware that to do a beautiful Banarasi sari, it takes 6 weeks of so many hours to be able to do that. And that's only the weaver. What about the person who reaps the cotton? What about the person who spins the cotton? What about the person who dyes it? Similarly, for musical instruments or for a musician, yes, we see the front end, which is the musician, but we don't see the back end. We don't see the way that the hide of the animal is cured or the way that it's put. And all of this, because there is ignorance and there isn't enough knowledge, we don't give any of this a value. And you wouldn't go to a Louis Vuitton shop and bargain for a Louis Vuitton bag. You would be in a line to book it, but you'll certainly do it if you go to a craft heart or a dastakar, which is sad. And again, going back to the point, recently when Bindu said maybe tourism has, Bindu tourism hasn't. I mean, just very recently, 2 Sundays ago, in a lunch with senior technocrats and ideators who run governments, think tank kind of things, etc. My question was that why isn't there been any input for either our sector, which is the creative and the cultural sector, and of course tourism and hospitality? And he said, but you all don't have a voice. So coming back to what you were saying, how do you do this? How?
That's the thing.
It's dependent on us. Where do we come together? Even today, I mean, look at this offering that you have. How many artists and artisans bother to come together? It's always been the piece of the pie is so small. Let's do our best to get our piece of the pie. We are not united. I mean, if you look at policy, I mean, Rajiv Sethi put together a seminal report for the then Planning Commission 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. I can't remember how many years ago, pretty much last minute for Arun Maira and for Saida, I forget her name for a second. And that report, for example, sits. But where is the policy post that? What have we done as the cultural sector, as the artisanal or the artist sector, to be able to come together and say, we are the CII or the FICCI for this sector. We will go to government with our needs, etc. We don't. We come together on platforms like this, but that's it. We don't even fill in, Bindu and Ayush were talking about, we need to be seen not just as Dane, I mean, as handouts, but as contributors.
Yeah.
We are running survey after survey. I mean, nobody even wants to fill up the survey. If you do not present empirical evidence, how can we change policy? How long can we continue to say in the West End, in Broadway, in UK, in Singapore? Oh, forget it. We have to start district and state-wise. We have to map what we are doing here and then start building it. Otherwise, all of this will fall, on barren land. Sorry, I tend to go on a rant.
No, but you're absolutely right. I think this is the point. This is where we should all agree to start a kind of FICCI or whatever kind of thing, and make it structured. And
absolutely, ask Ashok Kapoor, Bindu. Ashok is here from Varanasi. Today, you can't get medicine in Varanasi. We're talking about artists and artisans and so on.
Yeah. I mean, why Varanasi? Let's not talk of Delhi. I mean, but let's not go there because just
to bring the conversation back, one good thing or a really good thing that happened last year when COVID started is that for the first time in my experience of 20 years in the sector, I saw people come together. They came together spontaneously, voluntarily, and they really came together keeping the artisan and the artist at the center. And I have not seen this before because everyone's doing great work, but they've been doing it in their silos. And everyone's very well-meaning, but everyone's kind of got their focus. They've been doing that work. For the first time, collaborations started to happen. Creative Dignity emerged, Hand for Handmade emerged, Handmade in India emerged. A number of movements came together, and they have had an impact. And I think if we can sustain the collaborations, there's a future. If we go back to the way things were, there's no hope. But I'd like each of you to share your experience as part of these collaborations, and maybe we can highlight some of the successes that they've had in the past year. Ayush, you've been part of some of these collaborations.
Yeah, sometimes people say that there's no option but to collaborate, and I would, probably change that to collaboration is the best option today. The craft and culture, as you said, it's a very fragmented ecosystem, and India is a complex place where, at times limitations of thought translate into a territoriality, and we are often kind of split between a centralized decision or a local decision. The thing is, it's all, everybody plays a part. And I think, my personal experience with COVID is that, it's like this gigantic lens that it's just magnified the fractures that were already there. And that's good. It's great because we see things in a starker reality. And I think a lot of us have got together because this reality is something we did not like. And we all, from my experience, and I speak personally for myself, is that let me give this a shot because this is the only shot I have. And as a person in the field, I've seen a lot of very skilled processes go away. And and this is also something that I often say, is that it's not just a skill, it's a sensibility. And it's impossible to map a sensibility. It's impossible to document it. So like take something like, the arch in Jaipur. It's made out of lime, it's made out of bricks and mortar and all that. But can somebody make the arch? Can somebody draw it beautifully? And that's a sensibility I've seen vanish. And I think probably all of us coming together bring together the possibility of retaining the sensibility, not just a skill. Everybody's doing their bit, and all of us come with such a varied set of experiences and abilities. And we are all needed. Every small bit matters. And it's great that everybody thinks like this. Many movements have come together and they're all working together. We do not, there is literally an incredible breakdown of territories. And that's absolutely brilliant. And I really hope that this is the one true takeaway that all of us have. The mountain will be moved, rock by rock, and all of us will do our bit. And I'm sure all of us will, because it's the good that is shining out amongst all the bad things we hear. I hear 10 times more good things that people are doing. So our hearts are in the right place. And I really count upon us as a country, as a people, to put that heart and our mind together and get this intention to move with the government or without the government. We will make it happen.
Collaboration, I think the beauty of collaboration is that really, each of us brings something to the table, and that something is enough. It's enough to make the whole larger than the sum of the parts, and that's how you can just, what we've been able to do in a year has been exponential to anything before that. In terms of mobilizing on the ground, whether it's relief, whether it's helping liquidate stocks, whether it's looking at future policy advocacy, so much has been done in such little time. We just need to keep the momentum going.
The other thing that is pretty amazing is that, very often people just get up and do something. We do a project. But, there's a whole discussion that has to be done before we do a project, before we do something. The structural planning, the philosophical base for doing something and why we're doing it. What is the conceptual framework of the creative industries in India? People often look at this as a wasteful exercise. It's people talking. But hey, our constitution is a conceptual framework. Our country will fall apart without it. So the discussion of a conceptual framework is going on now. And that's brilliant because it's never ever happened before.
Very true. Bindu, what's been your experience of collaborations that are working? Do you see this as the future for this
Oh, yes.
ecosystem?
So I'm going to talk, I mean, CD is fabulous, but I'm going to start talking of collaborations 20 years, from 20 years earlier. And we've had some very good experiences, I have to say. Now, whether it was because we were already a structured organization as INTACH, we had the right people in INTACH, and we had the trust. We are still today a trusted organization. People may not like us or whatever, but no one can say that these people do anything that is not to be done. So I think that, you know, wherever we do, whether it's CD or whatever we come together as, I think trust. We have to first build the trust amongst ourselves and then to the larger. But I'm going to go back to architectural heritage and architectural crafts, because that's when our first collaboration actually started, not just for projects. We were doing a lot of restoration in Jaisalmer Fort. And I started thinking of the craftspeople because, you know, they had created all this magnificent architecture, and now they were making small things. They had been reduced to making really small things for the bazaars, you know, like little boxes, little murtis, and their skills were just amazing. And then, of course, INTACH didn't at that time have any money, but we had thinking power, and we went through the government this thing, and we realized that the government has a scheme for CFCs, Common Facility Centers. That scheme was to actually for other state governments, basically, to help set up facility centers for craftspeople, artisans in special areas. And the one thing that they needed, the only thing they needed actually was land. They were not in that scheme giving land, and they had not put land in because it was all to be given to states, to other states. So land is not a problem for the government. However, we managed to convince them that you let us do it and we will find the land, though we didn't have any land ourselves. And so I spoke to a very well-known, I won't take his name, very respected craftsperson who had a small this thing, and he had a small space. And I said, हम आपको सब कुछ लाके देंगे, machinery, shed, electricity, money to raise it, design input, everything, पर आपको अपनी जगह देना है. And he said, हाँ, जरूर, आप आ जाइए. I ran back to Delhi as usual, March 31st से पहले, you know, you have to do it. So ran back, rushed into the offices, got the check, went with my check back to Jaisalmer, and he refused. By that time, somebody had told him, INTACH aayega, they will take away everything. If they put something, you know, that's the mindset. Naturally, don't blame them, because who gives anything free? Nobody gives anything free. That's how they think. Why will anybody, another organization come, set it all up and just leave it for you to work on? Not happening. So I just got really, I said to my colleague there, our convener, I said, this can't happen. I can't go back. It's a real slap. We'll never get money again from the government to do anything. If now we go back to say, we can't use your money. So we took a jeep, and I said, let's go to the outskirts. And it's an absolutely true story. And there was a chappar. I don't know how many people are here who won't understand. It was a straw roof with two poles, and one guy, Kamal, sitting doing tung on a small piece of stone with chota things like on the roadside. So I said, let's stop here. Let's ask him. So my colleague said, no, come on. He's too poor, you know. Where will he? I said, no, but let me just talk to him. So I went up to him and he said, I said, aapke paas jagah hai? And he said, yeah, right at the back is my house and I have a little place there. And I told him, I said, agar hum yahan pe, we put up a little unit for you, will you give the jagah? He said, yeah. I'm telling you, this collaboration or this trust or whatever. And in half an hour, he had agreed. We put the center up. Today, that, okay, he doesn't have the time to talk to me. He's become so big. along with the other people. He really, if I call him and I say, Kamal ji, mujhe do ye char hi abhi nahi de sakta hu, you know, and his children went to whatever schools, aspiration. I mean, that was a collaboration with people, government, organization, everything just organic. So I have very good experiences of collaborations, and I have many more. I just want to take your time.
Zoom out a little bit. We have an international audience here, and I want to ask each of you to kind of zoom out and visualize and kind of dream, go into a dream state, and tell me what is your blue sky vision of the creative and cultural ecosystem? What should it look like? And really, what can we do to make this happen? You know, so very quickly, I'm going to go around, and it's not just for India. It's I think it's relevant for the world, really, because we are so interconnected. So Sanjoy, I'm going to start with you and share with us what's your vision. How would you love to see this ecosystem look like and operate?
Before I answer that question, I just wanted to react to what Ayush and Bindu said. You know, totally,
Yes.
Ayush. I think what has changed in this past year of lockdown is that government has become much more accessible. And for what it's worth, you know, our conversations with state government at Rajasthan, Kerala, Assam, and Andhra really resulted in them putting out immediate schemes. Wasn't a lot of money, but immediate schemes for supporting rural artists and artisans. And they were in a small way. Assam was the most extravagant. They gave us a large sum of money to about 32,000 families, etc. But that really worked because we could get them. We've spoken to every state government, which otherwise would have taken time and energy, which I don't have in terms of flying to every state capital. On Zoom, one was able to do that. So absolutely, I think you know, collaboration, reaching out to people, things have changed. Yes, and not a lot has moved, but some of it has. To react to what Bindu saying, Bindu, you know, I don't know whether you know, but in Uttarakhand and Himachal, and it started in Rajasthan, where we took from how do you support the local artisan, and that's the reason Mala and the Chief Minister Vasundhara Raji immediately bought into that and said, okay, what do you want to change? So I said, why don't you just paint the railway stations? Use the local artisans to use local
Yeah.
methods, local whatever, and they were able to do that and so on and so forth. In Uttarakhand and Himachal, again, we said the stone cutting technique is disappearing. The technique of making the, you know, the tin, what's it called?
Slate. The gray slate is going.
Well,
The
gray
gray
slate
slate is going.
and the
And
tin cut.
the Sundar Patti. It's
Yeah,
called the
whatever it's
Sundar
called.
Patti.
And
Yeah.
again, we said every government building must stop building brick and mortar, steel and cement buildings, use local traditions. So we were able
Absolutely.
to get it to some extent past, you know, that some amount of buildings had to be done in that
We
way.
must talk offline because that's my passion also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So going back, Smita, I think, you know, stargazing, yes, of course we can stargaze and envision, but what has happened in again this last year, I think, is that countries, the GCDN, which is for those of you who don't know, is the Global Cultural District Network. It's again a network of organizations working in the cultural space in cities across the world. We've all started coming together. We've started coming together to look at best practices. We've started coming together to how can this impact communities and local life. Initially, in the beginning of last year, when this began, sorry, not beginning of last year, 2 years ago at their biannual GCDN conference, one of the things that I said is that cultural complexes in the brick and mortar way that we look at them today, the big opera houses itself, I've said today has lost meaning. And you need to reinvent or relook at how you're going to allocate resources, even in smart cities. And the only way that smart cities can be smart is if they're art cities, meaning at the core of the community, You have the libraries and the gymnasiums and the swimming pools and the performing arts centers and the entertainment district, etc. That has to become. But why? Why do we need that? Is it the luxury of it? No, it's not. It's like what you do in Brazil. You use the intervention to ensure that the community in which this intervention is being done is safe. And I'll give you two quick examples. One, of course, in Brazil, in the favelas, many of you may know that every favela today, whether it's police controlled or drug controlled, has two or three cultural NGOs or organizations working there. Why? To keep the kids safe. I mean, there was a particular thing when I went to the favela in Rio opposite the Intercontinental, which was a police controlled favela. And even while we were watching Hamlet or Macbeth or whatever being performed on the rooftop, there was a shootout at the, in the alleyway below. A group of young kids, 10 or 11, came and shot another group of young kids, 10, 11, 12, 13. And, I was horrified. The performance continued. And I was like, shouldn't we go and stop? And it was like, no, these kids are safe. That's why they're here. And it made such a huge difference. Similarly, whether it's in South Chicago where we work, or in Johannesburg, or in Delhi with Salam Balak Trust, using the arts, what is it that we do? We use the arts to be able to give young people a platform to realize their potential, realize their full ability, empower them in a way that they feel confident to be part of the society that we are. And we've got so many wonderful examples of success stories. But again, most importantly, it provides and creates an opportunity for the community around that to come together. That is the defining need of the arts. It's not necessarily what we continue to see. Everything is high art, and who's opera for, and who is the great orchestras for. Yes, there is a need for that. But there is also a crying and urgent need for communities across the world to come together to understand that the arts addresses everything from education to mental health to local requirements to local needs, and builds community and family. That can be the vision. Look local, dream international. And so many of our young people at Salam Balak Trust, or in South Chicago, or in Johannesburg or Cape Town, have now become really celebrated artists doing their thing. But it's not just about that. It's about everybody else. You don't have to become finally an artist. You can integrate with your community.
Can I just, sorry.
Sanjoy, and I think that's a beautiful vision, because it integrates everybody into a solution in a very real way. The community and all parts of the community. I mean, it's really art and culture at the heart of social problems, political problems, health problems. I mean, any kind of problem, you really have a solution built in within this solution. So, sorry, Bindu, you were saying.
Yeah, I was just, I recently read a very beautiful thing, and going on with Sanjoy and the community is part of that. Why do people get attracted to a beautiful thing, to whether it's a painting or it's a sculpture? It's because there's a hand behind it. It's been done by a hand. So you get without realizing it, you have an emotional connect to it. Because in your memory, in your collective memory, you can think that some hand made it. So that's what in all our cultural economy and a creative economy, but we are special. These people are special, and they have to be brought into the mainstream and to be understood, because actually they touch your heart. And you just have to be open. I mean, I don't want to say anything about the governments or governments anywhere over the world or anything, but really they have to be brought into the mainstream, because they can, like Sanjoy said, really open so many things. They can make the world so much better.
I just wanted to add to that. Sorry, Ayush, sorry, Smita. One of the things, when I remember when Boulder in Colorado did that bid to us to bring JLF there, and more recently in Adelaide, and I was like, and Belfast, I was like, why? And the mayor in Boulder, which is this white alone city, as most of you know, said to me, Sanjoy, if we don't understand how to deal with diversity, we as a town will die. And
Yes.
similarly in Belfast, they came to me 3 years in a row with a bid, and I was like, I mean, who on earth is going to agree to go to Belfast? And then the head of the city sat down with me and said that, I said, but why haven't you asked Hay on Wye, or why haven't you asked Edinburgh to go? It's next door to you. Why are you asking us at the other end of the world to come and set up something in Belfast? And she said, Sanjoy, you have to understand that anything that we do in Belfast will be seen either on one side or the other side of the religious political divide.
Yeah.
You guys are neutral, and you guys understand how to handle diversity and how to address the many issues around diversity. Now, if you take that as this need in the global world, and what I said in the beginning, that much of what today happens is the fear of the unknown, the fear of the migrant, the fear of the refugee, the fear of the minority religion or community. And then you use this and you say that no, it is about diversity. It's about celebrating that. It's about making sure that diversity enriches your very boring bangers and mashed potato. And instead, we've given them, tikka
With
masala.
little bit of mirchi.
Well said. Well said. Diversity, yeah, absolutely. If you can't, I mean, and that is one good follow. I mean, one of the many good things of globalization is that people have more access to not just things but other people. And if you and in any case, none of us really belong to where we sit today. We all started somewhere else. So, the whole, before we point fingers at refugees and migrants, we really need to look at how original to source are we really. I mean, no one is. We're a mix of so many generations of movement. But coming back, Ayush, you were saying.
There's a very nice word, and it's one of the pillars of the Jain belief system. It's called Anekantvad, and it's a very beautiful word because it says that there are many realities. There's another word which is called Syadvad, which is when you leave alive possibilities. You don't with a firm voice say no or yes, because there are other possibilities that are alive. And in that sense, a possibility has a life of its own. And you foster that, you bring it and you allow it to be. And I think that is one of the, Sanjoy had mentioned it right in the beginning, that art allows those possibilities, allows another truth to exist. The world would be a lesser place if we all had the same truth. And for all of us to coexist, I think this glue, this invisible glue is our creativity. At a personal level, I envision the world as a creative society that recognizes, acknowledges, and supports the creators of cultural assets. And unless it's a society-wide movement, the need to have external props for the cultural industries will remain. We do these children's, workshops. If they make one stitch with a needle and a thread, they will possibly value the Kantha sari, which has got millions of them. There is really no us and them. It's only a we. So this divide between a cultural practitioner and the cultural consumer is really a non-existent one. We all have to be part of it. And this narrative has to be systemic. It has to be introduced probably at all levels of education. Can a cultural asset be, a property that we can actually work with? Currently, in India, we don't recognize our intellectual property as an asset. And what if we included creativity in arts alongside board exams? We have the board exams in India, we have the A levels, O levels, we have the SATs. How do we say that creativity is a prerequisite to getting higher education? Forget education, into being a civil person in society. It is a base. It's an absolutely uncompromisable level that you have to display and show an awareness of. That is the society I think we can work towards. It's not too difficult. We put a lot of emphasis on math and, the sciences and all. But really, what worth is a life that does not appreciate these other finer things that are worth living for? I think it is doable.
Right. I'm hearing. I'm leaving this. We have a few minutes more, but I'm feeling very positive and I'm optimistic actually, and I'm fundamentally an optimist. But when and that's the beauty of talking to people who are on the same page and an audience that's on the same page. And if we're talking about the creative and cultural industries of the future and really being at the heart of global solutions to many of our problems, to teach all of us to live with diversity, to coexist, and to do this through collaborations and really to do kind of, look at this as a solution, look at it as at the core and not peripheral. This is not, I always, people talk about the arts as soft power. This is deep power. I mean, this is not soft power. What is, I think we need to change the language and the terminology that we use around this ecosystem as well, and not sit on the periphery, but really be upfront and center and be recognized as that. And therein also comes the visibility for all the people and that are part of this. So we just have a few minutes left. If there's something you'd like to share, Sanjoy, any last words, thoughts?
Just to say that, because the creative sector, as Ayush and Bindu and you and I think everybody, Gitanjali has been typing about it, and is so vast. And a lot of the times people don't know where to start with.
Yes.
And how do you start? How do you make sense of this? Let alone look at the international relationships that are required. The other issue, primarily because of this, is that at the technocrat policy level, and I'll give you an example of some foolishness. So, the handloom or textile ministry had the NID students go out to Varanasi, paying them a lakh for a period of time to go and work with the weavers of Varanasi. Now, these young kids had no idea how a handloom worked or how the weavers worked, but they went with their fanciful designs, not understanding and realizing that the design built into the loom of the Varanasi silk sari maker, the Maheshwari or the Kota, these are invaluable, coming in generation after generation. So in all of this of us trying to leapfrog in many ways across time and space to, create something in this new construct of creative industries or creative sector, as you said, what we forget is that first and foremost, we have to know, understand, empathize, and better and innovate within what is there. Rather than, there is no value because it's old school, and you have to create something totally new. No, you don't have to first learn. I mean, if you don't learn how to paint, how will you be a Picasso? And it's that basic skill set and necessity. And one of the things we've been doing with HRD ministries, I've been saying that, you guys talk about design and introduce it in, in graduation. I'm saying why? Design and aesthetics has to be part and parcel from kindergarten. It surrounds us. It's part of us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It has to be part of this process. It's not removed. It's our education. Until we're able to do that and celebrate. Again, I'm going back to wherever you are. You're in UP, you're in Aligarh, whether you are in the glass making area, celebrate what you have, improve that, provide the resources, provide the technology and the know-how. Okay, forget all of that, provide them some health means to be able to ensure their health is appropriately looked after. Forget the rest. Why am I getting carried away? Let's look at the basics.
There's a very nice phrase called design by evolution versus design by revolution. And I think this is really what we need. Design by evolution is build on what we have already, and we have a lot. And like one of the parables or whatever you might call it is that imagine India as a heap of amazing jewels. We have the most fantastic jewels scattered. The challenge for us is to put it together in the most gorgeous Navlakha har possible. All of us, that string is all we need. It's just a string. We do not need much. And I think that is really amazing. And it's so possible. And Smita, you were talking about soft power. I grew up in Africa in a small village in northern Ghana. And we had to go to another country to get our basic, supplies. And we'd go there, and there was a Lebanese shopkeeper. He met my father and he said, "Which country are you from?" Papa said, "India." And he broke off into a Mohammed Rafi song. He did not understand a word of it. This is the power that our cultural industries have. And if you look at it, a lot of what we are reacting to now is Hollywood. That is a cultural power, and it's not soft by any means. It is very hard, it's out there, direct, and has very strong commercial aspects to it. And I think this is the power we need. We are done with the days of war. We're done with the days of embargoes and all that things. This is really what matters today. That is what our future looks at. Nobody's interested in all these sort of political posturing. No one. Do you think the guy who's working with the phone or seeing a Netflix movie is bothered? No. So I think here's where the opportunity is. And I'm sure we'll all grab it with as many hands as we have. Durga had 8, 12, many.
But retag it from soft
Hands
power
and
to
heads.
smart power.
Hands and
Soft
heads.
power. Sorry.
Sorry, Sanjay, you said?
I was
You
just
need the
saying
heads.
retag soft power to smart power.
Yeah, I would say we should, yeah.
Change the language we use as practitioners
Yes,
and
yes,
spread out into the ecosystem. So fantastic. I think if we all pledge to do this and to continue our collaborations, the future is bright. And I'm hopeful. So, Catalyst 2030 has been an eye-opener to bring, 500, 600 social entrepreneurs from around the world in a very similar way, to volunteer their time, their expertise, their resources, to come together to work to really solve problems that you can't do alone. No one can do it alone. And we're, crazy to think that we can. So let's join all the movements that we can to collaborate. And hopefully every time we have this conversation, we will have good stories and positive movement and growth to show for it. So on that, I'm going to close the conversation for now, but the work continues. And I thank you all for being here and joining us and really sharing the best of your minds and thoughts and hearts with us. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Bindu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was